It was one of those late nights when exhaustion sits heavy on your shoulders and silence fills the empty roads. The clock on my dash read 11:47 p.m. I should have gone straight home, but the grime on my car's windshield was bothering me. There was a 24-hour self-service car wash just outside town. A concrete shelter with 4 washing bays and a single flickering light that buzzed like a trapped wasp. The kind of place people pass without noticing. The kind of place that looks different when you're alone. I pulled in, the gravel crunching under my tires. The night was strangely still, the kind of stillness that makes every sound echo louder than it should. I got out, fed a handful of quarters into the control panel, and grabbed the high-pressure hose. The machine came alive with a hiss, and thick white foam sprayed across the car's hood, climbing the windows in slow, ghostly waves. The smell of detergent mixed with the cold air, and the sound of running water became the only heartbeat in that hollow place. For a few minutes, I was calm, focused, the kind of calm that tricks you into thinking you're safe. But then something felt off. It was like the silence behind the sound of water had changed. Not broken exactly, but heavier, like someone else was there holding their breath just out of sight. I looked up. Beyond the thick wall of foam covering my windshield, the world outside was a blur of shadows. I couldn't see clearly, just vague shapes bending and stretching under the flickering light. I stopped spraying for a second, lowering the hose. My breath fogged the glass as I peered through the foam. Nothing. Just the empty wash bay. I told myself I was being paranoid and started rinsing again. Then thump. A sharp, heavy sound on the hood. I froze. The hose slipped from my hand and clattered to the ground, the stream of water dancing wildly across the concrete. The sound came again, louder. Thump. This time from the roof. I backed up a step, scanning the walls. No one. My pulse quickened, and for the first time I realized how completely alone I was. Or maybe I wasn't. I climbed back into the car and locked the doors. The foam on the windshield had thickened into an opaque wall of white, isolating me inside. I could hear faint footsteps circling. Then came the sound that would crawl under my skin for the rest of my life, a laugh. Not one, but several. A group of voices muffled by the foam, laughing low and wet, like they were trying not to choke on it. Then something brushed against the driver's window, slow, deliberate, and human. And just as I turned toward the sound, a face appeared behind the foam, pressed against the glass. A smile too wide, too wrong. My breath hitched. I could barely make out the features through the soap, but I knew what I saw. A human face, distorted and grinning like a mask stretched too tight. The laughter outside rose again, louder, echoing in waves around the car. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, hoping I was imagining it. But then another face appeared beside the first, and then a third. They moved in slow, unnatural jerks, their silhouettes sliding against the car like shadows trying to crawl inside. The foam thinned slightly under the dripping water, revealing pale skin streaked with something dark, mud maybe, or grease. One of them leaned forward and licked the glass, leaving a trail of saliva that mixed with the soap. I scrambled for my phone, but my hands were trembling so badly I dropped it between the seats. The laughter changed then, no longer random. It became rhythmic, almost synchronized, like they were performing some twisted chant. He, over and over, circling the car. I slammed my hand on the horn, but it gave only a weak honk that was swallowed by the sound of water still hissing from the hose outside. The figures didn't flinch. They just kept laughing. I tried the wipers. Soap smeared away in uneven streaks, just enough for me to glimpse them clearly. 4 of them now. 3 men, 1 woman, all in filthy clothing that looked soaked and heavy. Their faces were pale, almost gray, and their mouths, God, their mouths were wrong. Their smiles were impossibly wide, cut across their faces like gashes. Their teeth glistened, but not from light, more like from moisture. One of them tilted his head back and started banging it against the hood, in rhythm with the laughter. The woman crept toward my side window and leaned down, her breath fogging the glass. I could hear it, ragged, wheezing. Then in a voice so soft it barely rose above the hum of the power washer, she whispered, "We saw your face." My stomach dropped. The others stopped laughing. For a heartbeat, the world was silent. Then together they started giggling again, higher pitched this time, more frantic. It was like the sound of children mocking something they didn't understand. I tried the ignition. The car sputtered, then died. Again. Nothing but the click of a dry starter. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I glanced at the control panel outside. The red light blinked. Insert coins. I was trapped in a circle of light and shadows, foam running down my windows like melted wax. And somewhere beyond that thin layer of glass, 4 strangers with faces that didn't look human anymore were waiting. The night air outside had gone dead quiet, except for the occasional hiss of the hose still snaking on the wet floor. I sat there locked in my car, breathing shallow, too scared to move. The figures had stopped laughing. Now they were circling me slowly, dragging their hands along the glass, leaving streaks of dirt and soap wherever they touched. I turned the key again. Nothing. The battery light flickered and died. The radio crackled suddenly, tuning itself on without me touching it. A burst of static filled the car, then faint voices. Not a station. Just whispers echoed words that melted into one another, impossible to understand. I smacked the console, but the noise only grew louder, more distorted. And then I heard it, underneath the static, a giggle. The same laugh. One of them climbed onto the hood, his boots squeaking against the wet metal. I watched the hood sag slightly under his weight. He crouched there like some kind of animal, his face inches from the glass. The foam had nearly run off completely now, and in the half-light I could finally see him. His skin was pale blue, lips split and raw, his eyes wide open, pupils dilated so far the irises were just rings of black. He tilted his head, studying me like he was waiting for me to make a move. Then, with a slow grin, he raised one hand and started to wave. Not fast, just that slow, mocking movement back and forth. Another figure came to the passenger side, pressed her palms against the window, and began smearing soap in long, downward streaks. Her mouth was moving, whispering something. I could see the shapes of her words, but couldn't hear them. Then suddenly she slammed her forehead into the glass once, twice. The third hit left a spiderweb crack. I screamed and ducked down, fumbling again for my phone. When I finally found it, the screen was black. Dead. The lights in the bay flickered hard, plunging everything into strobing flashes of light and shadow. Each time the light came back, their faces were closer. Then, darkness. Total. The light above had died completely. Only the faint glow from the dashboard remained, and through that weak light I saw it. One of the faces pressed right against the driver's side window, whispering through a slit grin. "Come wash with us," panic tore through me like fire. I turned the key one last time, and by some miracle the engine coughed to life. The headlights flared on, cutting through the darkness, and caught them mid-step. They froze, glaring into the light like cornered animals. I threw the car into reverse and slammed the gas. The tires squealed against the wet concrete, throwing up water as I backed out of the bay. They started moving again, fast now. The woman lunged for the back bumper, her hand smacking hard against the metal. I jerked the wheel, spinning out into the lot. The car fishtailed, tires screeching as I aimed for the exit. But the gate, it was down. The steel barrier that had been open when I came in was now locked in place, lights blinking red. I slammed the brakes, my heart hammering. I could see them in the mirrors, coming closer, their limbs jerking unnaturally, smiles never fading. I jumped out, sprinting to the control panel by the gate. The keypad was flickering. I shoved quarters into the slot, but they clattered through and dropped out the return. The screen read, "Cycle in use." Behind me, the laughter rose again. I spun around. They were halfway across the lot, walking in that off-balance way, their clothes dragging wet across the ground. One of them was humming. I sprinted back to the car, jumped in and slammed the doors. I didn't think. I just rammed the gear into drive and hit the gas. The gate screeched and buckled as I slammed through it, the sound of tearing metal echoing behind me. As I sped down the empty road, I checked the rearview mirror and froze. They were standing in the middle of the lot, watching. All 4. Even from a distance, I could still see their smiles, faintly glowing in the car's taillights. Then, as I turned the corner, the headlights flickered. And for a second, just a second, I saw one of those faces reflected in the rearview mirror, sitting in the back seat behind me. When I turned around, it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I drove until sunrise, finally pulling over at a diner 2 towns away. My hands still shook as I poured myself coffee, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe I'd imagined more than I saw. That's what I told myself. But when I went back to the car, I froze. The vehicle was covered in handprints, hundreds of them, smudged into the dirt, streaking across every window and door. Some were small, like a child's. Others were elongated, too long to be human. I drove straight to a car wash in broad daylight this time. Crowded, Normal, safe. As the attendant scrubbed, one of them called me over. "Hey," he said, frowning. "You trying some kind of joke?" He pointed to the back bumper. There, written in clean white foam, were 4 dripping words. "We liked your face." I sold that car a week later. The new owner called me once. Said the radio kept turning itself on at night, playing faint laughter through the speakers. I hung up and blocked the number. Sometimes when I drive past that old wash, I still see the flicker of that same buzzing light. The bay is always empty, but if you listen closely as you pass, you can still hear it. The sound of laughter, bubbling softly beneath the hiss of running water. The late shift at the office had been a killer. By the time I finally clocked out, it was almost midnight. The city was quiet, draped in that peculiar stillness that only falls in the dead of night. My car was a mess, covered in a week's worth of road grime and city dust. I knew I should just go home, but the thought of starting the morning with a filthy car bugged me. So I took a detour, heading for the 24-hour automatic car wash on the edge of town. It was one of those places that always felt a little forgotten, even in broad daylight. Pulling in, the lot was completely empty. The only light came from the flickering fluorescent tubes inside the car wash bay, casting long, dancing shadows across the wet concrete. A low electric hum vibrated in the air. I paid at the automated kiosk, the machine's tinny voice the only sound besides my engine. The light turned green, and I slowly rolled my car onto the tracks, putting it in neutral. The heavy bay door rumbled shut behind me, plunging me into a world of humming machinery and dim, artificial light. For a moment, it was almost peaceful. The pre-soaked jets hissed to life, coating my windows in a fine mist. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes, ready to just zone out for the next 10 minutes. The giant, colorful brushes started to spin, their bristles whispering against the metal, and that's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. It was slow, deliberate, right on my driver's side window. My eyes snapped open. Through the thick layer of soap and water, I could just make out a dark shape, a silhouette moving past my car. My heart leaped into my throat. That wasn't possible. No one should be in here. The bay door was closed. It's an automated wash. Employees don't walk around inside while it's running. I strained to see, but the figure was already gone, lost in the suds and spinning brushes. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a piece of debris, a loose part of the machine hitting the glass. But the sound was too distinct, too human. It sounded exactly like knuckles rapping on a window. I locked my doors, the click echoing loudly in the small space. My hands were shaking. The brushes were moving over the roof now, a deafening roar that vibrated through the entire car. I kept my eyes glued to the windows, searching the soapy darkness for any sign of movement. Then, everything stopped. Abruptly, the brushes halted mid-spin, dripping water and soap. The jets went silent. The hum of the machinery died, leaving an unnerving, absolute quiet. The only sound left was the frantic, panicked drumming of my own heart. I was trapped. The car wash was stuck, and I was in the middle of it in a dark, wet box. The soap began to slide down the windows, creating creepy, distorted rivulets of light and shadow. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat. No service. Of course. Why would there be service inside a metal and concrete tunnel? Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. I thought about honking the horn, but what good would that do? The place was deserted. Who would hear me? I was utterly alone. Or was I? The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through me. The memory of that tapping, that shadowy figure, it felt so real. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but time had lost all meaning. Every drip of water, every creak of the car's suspension sounded like a footstep. I kept imagining a face appearing in one of the clear patches on the windows, a pale, distorted face peering in at me. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the fear, telling myself it was just a malfunction. A perfectly normal, albeit terrifying, equipment failure. Suddenly, with a violent jolt, the machine roared back to life. The final rinse cycle began, high-pressure jets blasting the soap off my car. I gasped, startled by the sudden noise. The massive blow dryers kicked in, a hurricane of hot air that pushed the last of the water away. The bay door in front of me began to rumble upwards, revealing the empty, moonlit parking lot. Freedom. I didn't wait. The second the track released my car, I slammed it into drive and floored it, tires squealing on the wet concrete as I shot out of the bay. I didn't even glance in the rearview mirror until I was a good half-mile down the road, my heart still hammering against my ribs. I needed to calm down. It was just a power surge, a glitch in the system. That's all. When I finally pulled into my own driveway, under the safe, familiar glow of my porch light, I took a deep breath, trying to laugh it off. What a night, I muttered to myself, grabbing my bag from the passenger seat. As I got out of the car, I glanced back at it, expecting to see it gleaming and spotless. But what I saw made my blood run cold. All over the car, smeared across the now clean surfaces, were handprints. Not just one or two, but dozens. They were on the hood, the doors, the roof, and they were all smudged, as if someone had been pressing their hands against the car and dragging them down through the soap. There were even small, child-sized prints mixed in with larger ones. And on the driver's side window, right where I'd heard the tapping, 3 distinct, perfectly formed knuckle prints were pressed into the glass. My breath hitched. I backed away from the car slowly. This wasn't a malfunction. This was real. The next morning, I couldn't get the image out of my head. I had to know. I drove back to the car wash, my stomach in knots. The place looked so ordinary in the daylight. I went inside the small office and found the clerk, an older man sipping coffee and reading the paper. I tried to sound casual. Hey, weird question, but was your wash having issues last night? Around midnight. It stopped mid-cycle. He looked up at me over his glasses. Nope. Everything's been running smooth. Checked the system logs this morning. No interruptions, no errors, not a single one. My voice trembled slightly as I asked, Did anyone else go into the wash bay last night? Maybe an employee doing maintenance? He shook his head, a definitive, certain gesture. No, ma'am. I was here all night. You were the only customer between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The sensors confirm it. No one entered or exited that bay except for your car. Impossible for anyone to get in there once the door closes. He took a sip of his coffee. Why? See something spooky? He chuckled. I couldn't answer. I just stared at him, the blood draining from my face. I mumbled a thank you and walked out, my mind reeling. No one had been in there. Impossible. But I knew what I heard, and I knew what I saw. The handprints were still faintly visible on my car when I got back to it. I've since washed my car a dozen times by hand, in my own driveway, in the bright, unforgiving light of day. I will never go to an automatic car wash at night again, because sometimes when you're locked in that dark, soapy tunnel, you're not as alone as you think. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had a creepy experience like this, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there. Stay. The city lights blurred into a watercolor smear behind me, each one a distant star I was leaving further and further behind. It was well past midnight, and the highway was a ribbon of deserted asphalt. My car, caked in a week's worth of road grime, was practically begging for a wash. Up ahead, a lonely sign glowed against the inky blackness. 24/7 auto wash. Perfect. Pulling off the main road, I followed a long, poorly lit driveway that snaked behind a derelict-looking gas station. The car wash itself was a concrete block, stark and utilitarian under the harsh glare of a few flickering fluorescent lights. The kind of place you'd only visit out of sheer desperation, which I guess I was. I drove up to the automated payment kiosk. The screen was cracked, but it sputtered to life as I approached. I tapped my card, selected the ultimate shine package, might as well go all out, and the metal barrier lifted with a reluctant groan. I eased my car onto the track, put it in neutral, and took my hands off the wheel as the conveyor system took hold. The bay doors slammed shut behind me with a deafening clang, plunging the world into a sudsy, neon-colored twilight. Red, blue, and green lights strobed through the windshield as the first jets of water hit the glass. It was actually kind of hypnotic, watching the giant brushes and sprayers do their thing. I leaned back, scrolling through my phone, the rhythmic hum of the machinery a surprisingly calming soundtrack. The pre-soak cycle finished and the big shaggy roller brushes descended. They spun to life, their bristles slapping against the car's body. Thump thump whir, thump thump whir. Then another sound joined the chorus. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't coming from the machinery. It was coming from the rear passenger side window right behind my head. I froze, my thumb hovering over my phone screen. It was impossible. No one could be out there. The brushes were massive, spinning at high speed. Anyone standing that close would be, well, it wouldn't be pretty. It had to be a loose piece of equipment, a stray nozzle hitting the glass. The tapping stopped. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. My heart was thumping against my ribs. See? Just the machine. Just the weird, creepy, middle-of-the-night machine. The car was now being drenched in a thick layer of pink foam. It was so dense I could barely see the strobing lights through it. The world outside my car had dissolved into a bubbly, cotton candy-colored void. And then the tapping started again. Tap, 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 tap. This time it was faster, more insistent, and it was definitely on the glass, just inches from my ear. I slowly, very slowly, turned my head. Through the thick foam, I could make out a shape. A dark silhouette, distorted by the soap and water pressed against the window. It was the shape of a hand. A 5-fingered hand, splayed flat against the glass. My blood ran cold. I snapped my head forward, staring straight ahead, my knuckles white on the steering wheel I wasn't even supposed to be touching. This wasn't real, it couldn't be. My mind was playing tricks on me. The late hour, the isolation, it was all getting to me. The giant overhead brush began its slow pass over the roof, and for a moment the hand was gone, scraped away by the bristles. Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. I laughed a little, a shaky, pathetic sound. Of course, it was just an illusion, a trick of the light and the foam. The car moved forward into the rinse cycle. Powerful jets of water blasted the foam away, clearing my view. As the passenger side window became clear again, my breath hitched in my throat. Streaked across the now clean glass were 5 long, greasy fingerprints. My heart hammered against my chest like a trapped bird. Okay. This was not in my head. Someone was out there. Or something. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat. I needed to call for help. But who? The police? Hello, officer. There's a ghost. Or a very determined window washer, in the car wash with me. They'd think I was crazy. The car was nearing the end of the tunnel, the final drying stage. Massive blowers roared to life, blasting the car with hurricane-force winds. The noise was deafening, vibrating through the entire frame of the vehicle. Through the roar, I could still hear it. The tapping. But it wasn't on the side window anymore. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the windshield, right in front of my face. I looked up and my soul just about left my body. Pressed against the glass, looking down at me, was a face. It was pale and gaunt, with sunken, hollow eyes that were black pits in the strobing light. Its mouth was a thin, lipless line, and its wet, stringy hair was plastered to its skull. It wasn't a reflection. It was outside on the hood of my car, somehow clinging on against the force of the industrial blowers. Its fingers, long and skeletal, tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. It smiled, a slow, horrifying crack in its pale face, revealing rows of small, discolored teeth. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that was swallowed by the roar of the dryers. I slammed my foot on the gas, a useless, panicked reflex. The car was still on the track, still being pulled forward at a maddeningly slow pace. The face just watched me, its dead eyes locked on mine. It raised a hand and slowly, deliberately, drew a line down the glass, leaving a grimy streak right in my line of sight. The blowers cut out. The bay door in front of me began to slide open, revealing the blessed familiar darkness of the outside world. Freedom. Just a few more feet. My car rolled off the track. The moment the tires hit the solid pavement, I slammed the gear shift into drive and stomped on the accelerator. The tires screeched as I shot out of the car wash and onto the dark driveway. I didn't slow down. I blew past the derelict gas station back onto the empty highway, pushing the car faster and faster, leaving the glowing sign of the 24/7 auto wash shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't stop driving for an hour. My heart didn't stop pounding for 3. When I finally pulled over, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the engine off. I got out, the night air cold on my skin, and walked to the front of my car. It was immaculate, spotless, gleaming under the moonlight. The ultimate shine package had delivered. There were no streaks on the windshield, no greasy fingerprints on the windows. Nothing. It was as if nothing had ever happened, as if no one had ever been there. But I know what I saw, and I can promise you one thing. I will never, ever go to a 24-hour car wash at night again. My car can stay dirty,